Okay, so we are going to cover the sugya of Shehechiyanu as it pertains to fulfilling a mitzvah. So we'll jump into the Makoros and see how this works. Okay, so the Gemara in Menachos says, "Osa sukol atzmo, Omer Baruch Atashon Kemacham Shehechiyanu Kimanu B'Yano Azman Azeh." Right, so Ba Leishev Ba Omer Baruch Atashon Kemacham Shehechiyanu Tzivanu Leishev Basukah. Right, so this is strange because we don't do this, so it's a seemingly odd practice, but it seems that when you manufacture a sukkah, right? When you manufacture your own sukkah, so there's an obligation as you're building the sukkah to make a Shehechiyanu, right? You recite the Birchas Shehechiyanu, and that's interesting. So the question is, what exactly is generating this obligation to recite the Bracha of Shehechiyanu here? And what about manufacturing the mitzvah? Has the Shehechiyanu recited at this point and not at the fulfillment of the mitzvah? We generally, the way it works, practically today, at least what our nihug is, what our custom is to recite the Shehechiyanu when we sit in the sukkah. But that's a little confusing because while it seems like it could be that we're reciting the Shehechiyanu on sitting in the sukkah, which would be in contradiction to this Gemara, that when we say the Shehechiyanu, we're saying it during Kiddush, which could also be the Shehechiyanu on the Chag. So it's not necessarily on the sukkah. So we shouldn't look at our practice and say, well, that's not what we do. We recite the Shehechiyanu somewhere else, because it's really the sentence should stop with, well, that's not what we do, because the second Shehechiyanu is not this Shehechiyanu that the Gemara is referring to. The Gemara is referring to the Shehechiyanu on the mitzvah of yeshiva b'sukkah, sitting in a sukkah, or living in a sukkah. So, and the Gemara seems to say that should be done at the manufacturing of the mitzvah.
The Gemara, are there other Gemaras that talk about other mitzvos where we say Shehechiyanu during the manufacture of the mitzvos?
Not that I'm aware of. This is the source of it. I don't think I saw any others, but I could be mistaken. But the Rambam says Kol mitzvah shi mizman l'zman kigon shofar sukkah lulav mikra megillah ner Chanukah, right? So v'chein kol mitzvah shi kinyan lo kigon tzitzis tefillin mezuzah ma'aka v'chein mitzvah shi netzadira ve'ena mitzuya b'chol eis sher doma mitzvah mizman zman yom milas beno pidyon ben ben u'mvarach alav b'shas asiyasa Shehechiyanu. So here the Rambam lists a whole litany of mitzvos, right? 3 categories of mitzvos, and all 3 of them, he says that when do you recite the bracha of Shehechiyanu? When you manufacture the mitzvah. So whether it's a Megillah, whether it's a Neros Chanukah, whether it's the shofar, it's Peretzitzis, right? Whatever it is. So you say this bracha of Shehechiyanu at this time that you manufacture the mitzvah. The muloberach, right? The Rambam says, let's say you didn't do it the way you were supposed to. At the al sukkah lulav v'chetzem b'Shehechiyanu b'shas asiyah. Let's say you didn't do it the shas asiyah, so then you should make the Shehechiyanu at the time where you're yotzei the mitzvah, right? Then bedi'evid. The bedi'evid means, you didn't ask beforehand, you didn't, but now I did it accidentally, so now what do I do, right? So you built the whole sukkah, and your neighbor tells you you built the sukkah, it's great, you finished, when did you make a Shehechiyanu? Did you make Shehechiyanu? I don't remember when I didn't make a Shehechiyanu. So they say, okay, when do I make a Shehechiyanu now? So now that you've already built the sukkah, so then you should make a Shehechiyanu when you fulfill the mitzvah. But ideally, the Shehechiyanu should be recited at the asiyas mitzvah, the manufacture of the mitzvah. So that's true, it should be done at the manufacturing of the mitzvah. So the question has to be answered, then how could you recite it b'di'evid at the fulfilling of the mitzvah? Right? Well, how is that? How is it that the fulfilling of the mitzvah, that's when you should recite the Shehechiyanu? It's supposed to be done at one point, right? It's like we bring it to the Birchas mitzvah question, right? When I make a Birchas mitzvah, so if I've already finished the mitzvah, right? So then I can't make the Birchas mitzvah later on. So the same logic I would think applies to the Shehechiyanu. right? If I've already sat in my sukkah and then left my sukkah, and now I'm driving 20 miles away, and I said I never made a Birchas sukkah, right? Leishei b'sukkah. So I can't make a leishei b'sukkah at that point, right? It's too late. So the same thing should be said with Shehechiyanu. I already built the sukkah. The sukkah's been built for a week, and I forgot to make a Shehechiyanu, so I can't make a Shehechiyanu now a week later when I sit in the sukkah. So how's that possible? Okay.
Well, why? It sounds kind of logical what you're saying, that it's too late because you've already performed the mitzvah. But why is that the case, though? Well, why can't I make the bracha after I finish doing the mitzvah?
Oh, we had a shiur on that. We did a whole shiur on that. That was one of the principles of Birchas mitzvah. I think that was like 2 shiurim ago. I sent you the video of it. Yeah, I said we did that. We did. Yeah, we went through it. Okay. So the Kesef Mishnah here says as follows. It says Chometz Ishim Isman. Right. So the Kesef Mishnah says like this. Right, so he has a very, the Kesef Mishnah, I saw this later on in the Rambam, he says the same exact thing, but he has a very weird, to our view of halacha, is that we figure out a principle, and then we apply the principle to different situations. Here the Kesef Mishnah is saying that to the Rambam, there was like a lot of randomness, right? He just said Shehechiyanu at random different mitzvos at different points, so therefore the Rambam tries to come along and give some sort of logic to it. So how does he do that? He presents 3 categories: mitzvos that occur periodically on the calendar, right? So Sukkot comes up once a year, so that's one example, right? So Sukkah. Then mitzvos that are objects that you purchase, like you purchase a pair of tefillin, so you make a Shehechiyanu on those, right? And then you have a third mitzvah, a third category, which are mitzvos that are not periodic on the calendar, but are periodic on they're periodic in life. Let's say they're life cycle events, right? So bris milah is whenever you have a son. It's not on the calendar. Right? There's no calendar date that this is when you have a bris milah, but the Rambam says it's similar to that type of a thing. So the Rambam says, look, if you look at all the mitzvahs that you make a Shehechiyanu on, you'll see that they break down into those 3 categories, and those 3 categories are what gets it. Against the Shehechiyanu. So why isn't there one clear svarah as to what generates the Shehechiyanu? Why can't we just say that this is when you say Shehechiyanu, and these are all the mitzvahs that apply to it? Why the 3 categories? Why does it seem so random to the Rambam? Okay. In a long tshuva that the Rambam has on this, he says why do we have 3 categories? So the 3 categories of brachos to recite a Shehechiyanu are listed to exclude the other mitzvos that don't fit and don't have a Shehechiyanu recited. Right? Those are, so it's to exclude all other mitzvos. In other words, the Rambam's not really coming, so he seems to be saying that he's not coming to explain what mitzvos get a Shehechiyanu. He's really coming to explain what mitzvos don't get a Shehechiyanu. So when I throw a mitzvah, right, and say, okay, why doesn't this type of a mitzvah get a Shehechiyanu? So then you'll say, it doesn't fit into the 3 categories, and therefore it doesn't get a Shehechiyanu. Right? That's right. So, and that's very easy. So an example would be of a mitzvah that doesn't get a Shehechiyanu. Let's see here. It's very simple. Mitzvah, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank here. And is like any of the mitzvahs would apply here. Saying Shema. Okay, right. So stucca. Okay, so stucca. I don't know how you. Okay, so stucca. Right. Every time I want to give stucca, so that's very frequent that I give stucca. Right. It should be at least. Right. So I'm frequently fulfilling the mitzvah of giving stucca. So why would I say Shehechiyanu on stucca? It doesn't fit into any of the 3 categories. It's not something that's periodic on the calendar. It's not something that I bought. There's no object that I bought to give stucca, and there's no there's no unusual, regular type of time periodic thing that seems like it's periodic on the calendar, but not based on the calendar. So now I know it doesn't get a Shehechiyanu. Okay, so that's interesting. The Rambam's really coming to create 3 categories to exclude mitzvos, not to include mitzvos. Okay. The Gra, this is fascinating. The Gra says that Shehechiyanu, he's referring to Hanukkah candles. Okay, so, and he says that the Shehechiyanu has to be recited before you light the Hanukkah candles, right? So almost like injecting, and he uses the term, an overlasiyasan aspect to the mitzvah Shehechiyanu. Just like a Birchas of mitzvah has to be recited before before a mitzvah is performed, so too does this Shehechiyanu. Yeah, that's the idea. Okay. That's the idea here. Okay. Okay. So my question is, is that only Hanukkah candles, or is that all mitzvos, right? And then how does that work logistically? Yeah, like with say building a sukkah. So does that mean you build this? You say Shehechiyanu before you build the sukkah? It's clearly not, right before you build the sukkah. Like I take out my hammer and I have all of the pieces of the sukkah in my machsan, in my garage, and now I'm gonna take it out, right? So that's not what's happening, right? I don't make a Shehechiyanu at that point. So what is that? How would that work with manufacturing mitzvos? Okay.
When you have the issue of overlasiyasan, so if you're going to make Birchas HaMitzvah doesn't, I guess you're not ending the mitzvah when you make the bracha, because you still have to do the action. In other words, when I make the Birchas HaMitzvah, and then I'm making Shehechiyanu, I still haven't done the mitzvah yet.
Wait, the Shehechiyanu?
I'm making, if I wasn't going to make a Shehechiyanu, then I make Birchas HaMitzvah, and then I do the action of the mitzvah.
Okay.
But now that I'm making a Shehechiyanu, I'm waiting to do the action of the mitzvah because it has to be overlasiyasan.
Shehechiyanu has to be, first of all, Shehechiyanu has to be done at the manufacturing of the mitzvah or at the purchase of the mitzvah. It's not done at the time of the mitzvah.
I thought that's only the Gemara. That's also the Rambam?
Yeah, the Rambam says, that's the Rambam says also. It says B'shas Asiyah.
Okay.
Right. That's the Gra. It's hard to see that in the Gra, like that the Gra is really saying that. Because Lomar Asha Asa B'Shehechiyanu Tzarech over Lasiyasan. Right. So it seems already at the Gra's time they were making a Shehechiyanu. Over Shabbos I read like a 3 or 4 paragraph thing on why we don't do this anymore. Why we don't make a Shehechiyanu on at Shas Asiyah. There's no mitzvah that we do this for anymore. Nobody makes a Shehechiyanu like when they finish a pair of tefillin or when you tie tzitzis. There's no community, nobody does this, right? So a whole discussion as to why. It's a lot of technicalities, right? Like a lot of technicalities as to why it fell out of practice. But it seems to be from the Gemara and from the Rambam that this is what you would do. Right, that you would make a Shehechiyanu, and when you tie tzitzis, you make a Shehechiyanu, right? Not at the time of the purchase of the tzitzis, or at the time of the making of the shofar or whatever it is. The blowing of the shofar is what we do now, right? That's what we do. We make a Shehechiyanu when we blow shofar, right? So it seems like that wouldn't be ideal. Okay. The Rambam says as follows. The Rambam says, now we start working on a svarah here. So when it comes to the mitzvah Shehechiyanu, right? So the Rambam says, he says, Birchas. No, see this one. Here we go. Birchas acheros v'dvarim acherim harbe she'en behem psicha v'lo chasima tiknu chachamim derech shel chodel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there are many different brachos that were instituted as a way of praising and giving thanks to Hashem. Okay, kimo Birchas hatfila shekvar chasavim. Beilheim habona bayis chadash ve'tikna kelim chadashim bein yesh lo chayatzavim bein lo mevarach barach Hashem Shehechiyanu kimanu. Right. So there's a lot of brachos that are made as a praise of Hashem. One example is when you buy new things. Right. When you buy new things that make you happy. Right. So it's not buying a pencil, but you buy a car. Right. We don't buy cars that often. So you buy a car then you make a Shehechiyanu on that car, because that's something that's a kli chadash, that's something new. Okay, or you buy a house, you make a Shehechiyanu. right? And the purpose of this this thing is it's a Birchas HaShevach, right? So we have three categories of brachos, right? So you have Birchas Hana, things that you get pleasure on, Birchas Hamitzvos, and then Birchas HaShevach and Hadoya, things that are a bracha of thanks and praise. So Shehechiyanu is a bracha of thanks and praise, and the Rambam explains this earlier, but in more he explains it a little better. He says brachos rabos nuchacham derech shech hadaya v'derech bakasha. Right, so the brachos are written as a praise and a thanks, and even sometimes as a request of Hashem. Now, for what purpose? Right, what's the halachikiyum of these mitzvos? Right, so if we said that the Birchas Hana and the Birchas mitzvos are sort of a demonstration of a license or a demonstration that it's a mitzvah in order not to be casual about the mitzvah that we're about to do. So here the idea is kedei liskor sabori tamid, right? So in order to always be liskor doesn't mean to remember, right? That's the modern Hebrew, but in halacha liskor is to mention, right? So it's to always mention Hashem. Even if you didn't benefit and you didn't do a mitzvah, right? So we have nowadays like it's not based in like pure Judaism or halacha. It's interesting, but we have this thing like if you're really from, so you're always gonna say like Baruch Hashem and Mirza Hashem, right? So that's not really that actually, if you look into it, it actually comes from Islam. Right? Muslims always mention God's name. Judaism, we're supposed to take like God's name seriously. Yes, we don't mention it that often. We're not really supposed to say Baruch Hashem does. So how is it that we always mention Hashem? So whenever something interesting happens to us, like a phenomena, whether it's we buy something new and that makes us happy, or we see lightning and that scares us, or a friend we haven't seen in a while. So then there's a bracha that's instituted. In that way, we're always mentioning God's name when anything unique happens to us, when there's a unique experience or a unique phenomena that we're exposed to. So then we mention HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? That's the idea. So Shehechiyanu is one way where we always mention God's name, right? That's one way that we instituted that when any of these situations happen. So you buy a new car. So the question is, so how are you supposed to deal in terms of one's relationship with God when purchasing a big ticket item, right? So the way or let's say a new suit, doesn't have to be that big of a car, but something of that nature. So then we're supposed to mention God, right? That's how we do it, So in the vernacular, you might say like someone says that's a nice suit. You might say, "No, I really thank God for the opportunity to be able to afford something like this." Right, so that's not really how it's supposed to be done. It's supposed to be done as you buy the new suit, you experience this happiness, and then you say Shehechiyanu, and that's being mazkir HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's mentioning HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name in association. That's what the Shehechiyanu is. Okay, so to explain the Shehechiyanu when it comes to a mitzvah, right? So how do we do that? So the Shehechiyanu dafka is said at a point of simcha, right? That's when the bracha of Shehechiyanu is, right? There's many different brachos to mention God frequently. Shehechiyanu is assigned at a time of simcha, right? So there are certain mitzvos that achieve a high level of simcha, right? So the way that it's not enough just to demonstrate that it's a mitzvah, right, that we're doing, but the level of simcha has to be recognized and channeled in a mentioning of God's name. Right. So how do we do that? So that's right. We do that by mentioning Hashem with in a praise of Hashem at the time of the manufacturing of the mitzvah. Okay. So that's the svarah. All right, so let's see if we can apply to our answers. It seems like this is going to be a quick shiur this week. This might be the quickest shiur we ever had. Okay. So let's see. So what generates the recital of Shehechiyanu in general, right? Not just so that's when a phenomena, right, or something that an experience brings joy. So then you have to say a Shehechiyanu, right? That's what it does, right? So what about manufacturing the mitzvah? Has the Shehechiyanu recited at the point of the manufacturing of the mitzvah, right? Why is it at the time of making a lulav or making a sukkah, building a sukkah, or manufacturing a shofar? So why do I say Shehechiyanu then, right? So what's creating the joy here? What exactly? A new suit, I understand. A new car, I understand. Right? There's a joy there. I haven't seen a friend in a very long time, in 30 days. So I say a Shehechiyanu, right? So that I understand there's a level of simcha. So the same thing is true of certain mitzvos. Now the question is, when do you have the joy of those mitzvos? So one theory could be you have the joy at the point of fulfilling the mitzvah, right? That was the whole goal of the mitzvah, was to fulfill the mitzvah. And so the point is to recite the Shehechiyanu when you experience the joy at the fulfillment of the mitzvah. But the truth is that if you're approaching this mitzvah and you're in the realm of the mitzvah, so the joy really begins at the first association with the mitzvah, right? That's when the joy truly begins. So when I need to manufacture the object of the mitzvah, right? So when do I achieve that joy? That's the first association. That's the manufacturing. It's the first time I use a fancy idea. But when I rendezvous the first time with that mitzvah, when I'm involved in that mitzvah, so if it's think about it on Rosh Hashanah, right? So the whole year I haven't had anything to do with Rosh Hashanah, right? So I'm excited because here's my first chance to associate myself with a shofar again. I haven't had the mitzvah shofar. So now is going to be my first chance to hear the shofar again. So
how far along the road of manufacturing does one have to be in order to make the Shehechiyanu?
I'm not sure. You chop the horn off the animal,
chop down the tree to make the wood for the sukkah,
right.
or
right.
the skin for the parchment.
I didn't see anybody talk about it. I think the reason why you're not going to find many people talk about it is because it's not in practice. So usually those are like Shulchan Aruch, Mishnah Berurah type details that we find later on in halacha. But since it's not in practice, they didn't write about it. But it's a good question. But I'm saying so. But the point of why manufacturing before fulfilling is because that's my first time that I can fulfill the mitzvah, right? That's the first time I have an association with the mitzvah. So therefore, that's the point of joy. That's when I realized, yes, of course, there's joy when I fulfill the mitzvah, for sure. But the joy is somewhat tempered, really, because I've known for a certain amount of time that I'm going to be fulfilling this mitzvah, right? I've had time I built my sukkah, now I have to wait until sukkah's time comes, right, to fulfill the mitzvah. So the more I wait, the more used to the fact I get having the mitzvah. So the manufacturing is really the point of, it's a seminal point of simcha, you could say. Okay. So now the question becomes, how can Shehechiyanu be recited b'di'eved at the time of fulfilling the mitzvah, right? So I'm not saying I asked a good question. I think it's a very strong question because the whole idea is that we just said that the simcha really comes at the seminal point of it, and the simcha wanes as we get closer and closer to the mitzvah after I've already manufactured and been exposed to the mitzvah. Right. Once I have that exposure, so then the simcha is less. So now what happens? But it's still, yeah.
Even if the simcha is less, there's still simcha.
So okay, right.
Of course, you should still say it.
Right.
It's
so
not optimal. Right.
100%. So unlike, let's say, a license to do the mitzvah, right, where the license it's ridiculous for me to ask permission, quote unquote. After I've already started doing it, right? It doesn't make sense, right? So too, right? So you'd think the same thing is true of Shehechiyanu, but that's not true. The experience of happiness is not like that. Yes, my happiness isn't as great as when I was first, exposed to the mitzvah. That wasn't like, but the mitzvah, the simcha still lasts. It's just not as strong of simcha. So since I can still associate with simcha, and as long as I'm associated with the mitzvah, I can still recite the Shehechiyanu. Okay, so now we had thought, based on the Kesef Mishnah, we had thought that the Rambam.
Rabbi, can I just interrupt you?
Yeah.
Sorry, just because you said the simcha is not as great. I don't even know if you have to go there. You could say, like you said, you say the Shehechiyanu at the seminal point of the mitzvah of the simcha when it begins, even if it's greater later, doesn't mean you should say the Shehechiyanu later. Like you say the Shehechiyanu at the first opportunity to say it, like when the simcha begins. So I don't think you have to compare the simcha at the time manufacturing to the simcha at the time of doing the mitzvah. You just had to say, okay, we want to do it when it starts, but you could do it anytime between those points.
Okay. Oh,
But it's optimal to do it when.
Right. I wonder though. Let's say you build your sukkah a week before Sukkot, right? And then you get to, let's say, Yom Kippur, right? 5 days later, you get to, or 3 days later, you get to Yom Kippur, and then so you hear, they mention this halacha and shul. So I don't think you could recite the Shehechiyanu at that point. I think then you'd have to wait till Leil Sukkos. Then you have to wait till the minute you start fulfilling the mitzvah. I don't think you could just recite it at any point. That I think you have to have an association with the mitzvah where you're actively involved in the mitzvah. So either the manufacturing or the fulfillment of the mitzvah. I think that you would need that. But your larger point, I think, definitely stands true. Yeah. Okay. So the Kesef Mishnah we had seen had said that there's one clear svarah that generates Shehechiyanu. It just seemed like random. Right? That was how the Kesef Mishnah explained it. There just seem to be random mitzvos that you recite a Shehechiyanu on, and many that you don't. So it seems, right, that I would say that the question is incorrect. I'd say that there is one svarah that generates a Shehechiyanu, and that's simcha associated with a phenomena or with the fulfillment of a mitzvah, right? But the Rambam's 3 categories are 3 different applications of the simcha associated with the phenomena as it applies to mitzvos, right? But the difference between Shehechiyanu and other halachos that have a clear svarah is that Shehechiyanu applies at different times and different places. It's not like just on the night of this night you do this mitzvah, and on but Shehechiyanu is like, it is no one clear time you recite a Shehechiyanu. You can say it at time of happiness, but times of happiness applies for different reasons, right? So it's a phenomena-based halacha. It's not like others because it seems random, because there's not one clear time that you can say in a very explanatory manner that this is when you recite Shehechiyanu. Right? When you say, when do I make a Birchas nenin? You make a Birchas nenin before you have pleasure from eating or from smelling something. Okay, great. So now I know every time I eat or smell something, I make a Birchas nenin. When do I make a Birchas mitzvah? Any single time you're about to do a mitzvah, right? And now there are exceptions, but really any time you do a mitzvah. Okay. Now, when do I make a Shehechiyanu? Anytime you're happy isn't true. It's not anytime you're happy. Right, and so you'll say it's any time that you're happy when fulfilling a mitzvah. This is also not true, right? So it seems like it's random because there are only 3 times that, and the 3 times basically have nothing to do with each other. So that's why the Kesef Mishnah says that the Rambam, he's trying to put when the Kesef Mishnah says like a tam b'davar, he's trying to put a reason to it. What he's really saying is that the Rambam's trying to categorize it. He's trying to explain, when it is that and what generates the Shehechiyanu on a mitzvah. That's the idea. So it's not that it's random, right? And it's not that there's no one svarah that explains it. There is one svarah that explains it, but the one svarah seems more random than most cases of halacha because it splits into 3 different categories, and the 3 different categories themselves don't really have anything to do with each other. So that's what the Kesef Mishnah was saying. Okay.
When you said earlier that once you've already acted on the mitzvah, you fulfilled the mitzvah, then it's too late to do the Shehechiyanu.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But does that's for mitzvos. But what about if I buy a new house or a new car?
Yes, I don't think you can say Shehechiyanu at that point anymore because I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering the halacha properly, because the simcha's gone.
The simcha's gone when? A month after I bought the car?
That's the exact time. I think it's after you bought it. Right? A lot of times, if you see people make a Shehechiyanu when they first put on the suit that they buy, let's say, right? That's a mistake. The Shehechiyanu is supposed to be said when you purchase the suit. When the suit becomes yours, that's when you should say Shehechiyanu.
What if I have the the svarah that says, I'm going to be happiest, not when I buy the suit, but when I have a chance to wear it at
Yeah, well-
at the wedding or whatever simcha it's going to be.
That's not the halacha svarah. We don't say that. Now, so you could say it's gonna be happiest when I see the envy of my friends. Like that. That's not how we determine halacha, right? Halacha is determined on an objective basis, right? So Chazal determined it based on when you're when you purchase it. They said that's when you have the most simcha.
Oh, okay, fine. So that was basically my question. When does the Shehechiyanu have to be recited? Okay.
Yeah.
When you purchase it, does that mean before you give the money or like after you give the money?
It's a good question because like in halacha, I'm not sure.
Before the mitzvah.
No, I was going to say because in halacha, really, the way halacha really works is let's say I talk about like an apple, right? So I'm going around the supermarket and I pick up an apple and I say, okay, let's get 10 apples. I put them in the bag and then I put them in my cart. Really, according to halacha, those apples are now mine, and now I owe the store for the apples. It's not like common commercial transactions now, where you don't really purchase it until you pay for it. That's not really how halacha works. So that's why it says like it's a good question as to when it's really yours. When I pick up the suit off the rack, and if you buy suits off the rack, I do. So if you're buying a suit off the rack. And you say, oh, I really like this suit. I'm gonna go buy this suit now. So the question is, now do you owe the store money for that suit, and is that suit yours? Right? If you like, I don't know. I'm not an expert in this. So I don't want to say definitively, but yeah.
Right. So let's say that's true. As soon as you put it in your cart. Now, would you say the Shehechiyanu before you put it in the cart or after you put it in the cart?
That's the question. That's the question. If it's yours at that point, right? So then it would seem like the minute you decide and pick it up, right? You have to do some sort of action, like a kinyan, right? So when I pick it up, so it seemed to be it was mine now. I should make a Shehechiyanu.
Right. So my question is, normally with Birchas mitzvah, you say the bracha before you actually do the mitzvah, but here you're saying once you take it off the rack, it's yours. Now you're saying the Shehechiyanu after the action.
Right, because this is
before the action.
A mitzvah. This is not a Birchas mitzvah. It's a Birchas
Right.
So you have to
Right. Why is it different? Why is the Shehechiyanu after the actual transaction and a Birchas mitzvah is before the mitzvah?
Because the Shehechiyanu, you're really asking a larger question. Just to put your question, why is the Birchas Shehechiyanu done without over lasiyasa, right? Discounting the Vilna Gaon, which you have to get to. But why is that, right? So the reason is because Birchas Shehechiyanu are based on phenomena, right? So I can only make the bracha after the phenomena. I can't. In 99% of the cases, I can't. The word isn't perceive. I can't. I forget. I'm drawing a blank here. The word I can't assume that the phenomena is going to occur, right? It's just impossible, right? The lightning, right? So how can I make a bracha on lightning before I see the lightning, right? So the bracha is a response to phenomena. So the brachas are right.
I get that. So now my question would be, and maybe this is a little different because these are transactions. So the other times you say Shehechiyanu, say lighting the Hanukkah candles, you say the Shehechiyanu before you light the candles. Why not wait till you actually get the pleasure, like doing the transaction, and do it after?
Oh, okay, so that's the gra, right? The gra says that the Shehechiyanu has to be done over lasiyasa, right? So I would say my answer to that question is, right, because it seems to be 100%, right? All Shehechiyanu it's a response. It's a Shehechiyanu that's a response. And now we're assuming I'm going to have the I'm going to have the simcha. So why is it that now can I assume that I'm going to have the simcha? So I think the answer is because then when I'm preparing to do the mitzvah at that point, right? Let's say the mitzvah of Hanukkah candles, right? So lighting Hanukkah candles. So then it's the first association with the mitzvah is when I'm getting excited about the mitzvah, right? So that's the excitement's already there. Yeah, I haven't fulfilled the mitzvah, but that goes back to what we're saying that it's about the first association with the mitzvah, which is why it's the time of manufacturing, and why that's the first association with the mitzvah.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. So mitzvah could generate simcha prior to the fulfillment of the mitzvah, but a transaction can only generate the simcha after the transaction.
Right. Right, 100%, right. Yeah, because you could say on a technical level almost, going shopping isn't enough to generate simcha because I don't know if I'm gonna purchase anything. But when it comes to the week of Sukkot, and I say, okay, now let's gather around, we're gonna build the Sukkah together. So that's the level. That's excitement, and it makes sense because that's how mitzvahs from time to time work, right? That's the idea. Okay. And okay, so now what about mitzvos? Why do certain mitzvos not receive a Shehechiyanu? Right, so it has to be that they're lacking, right, a certain level of simcha. There must be, right. So an example of this is like this machlokas between Ashkenazim and Sephardim about whether or not you make a Shehechiyanu at bris milah, right? So Sephardim hold that you do, right, and Ashkenazim outside Yerushalayim, the middle in Yerushalayim is that even Ashkenazim make a Shehechiyanu on bris milah. But the Mordechai, who's a Rishon, so he says that you don't recite Shehechiyanu at bris milah because of the pain of the baby, right? So there's pain there, so it's not fully simcha, right? People are right. The baby's upset. Your mother's upset because the baby's upset, right? So therefore you don't say Shehechiyanu because it's lacking simcha. Another reason why it could be is because this is my only answer I can give. I don't know why, according to the Rambam, you wouldn't recite a Shehechiyanu on Sfiras HaOmer. Right? The Rambam doesn't have a bracha of Shehechiyanu. When he says, like you do, when he talks about counting Sfiras HaOmer, he doesn't say, he says you should make a Birchas mitzvah, but he doesn't say anything about Shehechiyanu. If you look at the categories, a mitzvah that comes up periodically, right, on the calendar, so Shehechiyanu Sfiras HaOmer qualifies, right? That for sure qualifies. So how come we don't say a bracha of Shehechiyanu, right? That's we should, right? So the only thing I can say is that if the simcha level is ongoing, right? If it's an ongoing mitzvah that takes a long time and there's no manufacturing, right? So Sfiras HaOmer is an example. You don't manufacture anything for Sfiras HaOmer, so the regularity of it doesn't allow for simcha. Right. So, right. But it's weak because you could say, what about just the first time? Is the first time you're excited about it, right? What's the difference if the next 48 days, I'm going to keep doing it? So who cares? So it's a very long mitzvah, so what? But I don't know. That's the only thing I can come up with as to, why there's no bracha on Sfiras HaOmer, and another reason why you wouldn't recite a Shehechiyanu.
So Rabbi, how do you define, like, what's the threshold for regularity? Like you said, we don't do it on tefillin because you do it every day. So the Sfiras HaOmer, you're doing it 7 weeks. Like,
right, I don't know. I'm not sure. Right, I don't know. It's if it doesn't have a calendar date, right? Let's say put it this way: if it has a calendar date, that's easy enough, right? So if it doesn't have a calendar date, and it's not done, right? So that's the one. It doesn't have a calendar date, and it's not done, and so there's nothing that you're purchasing. There's no object that you're purchasing. Okay, and it's not rare, right? So bris milah is rare, right? So if it's not rare, I don't know what makes it rare, what doesn't, where the line is. Is it every month, I would say if you're doing it multiple times in a month, we usually say, I'll give you another example from Shehechiyanu. They say, if I haven't seen my friend in 3 days and I haven't heard from him, so I say Shehechiyanu, right? So that's 30 days. Okay, so, and usually same thing with if I haven't seen the ocean in 30 days, I don't say, right, in Birchas 30 days usually is the threshold. So I'd say if it's a mitzvah that comes up more than every 30 days, that's a clear sign that you should say Shehechiyanu. I'd say that, that would probably be it, but that's a guess. But I'm guessing, it means educated. I'm guessing from other areas of halacha, that are close. Now, is it all within the category of Shevach Hodaya, like Birchas Shevach Hodaya? So that's where I'm getting it from. That's what I would say. Okay, that's the shiur. Next week is Tisha B'Av. So if you're willing, I have a sugya for Tisha B'Av. So you're not allowed to learn Torah on Tisha B'Av. So I have a sugya. So if you want at 10 in the morning, your time, and 5 p.m. Your time. So if you want, I'm definitely 100% willing to give a shiur.
But I thought you can't learn on Tisha B'Av.
You can learn things related to Tisha B'Av.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I'm saying
Yeah,
we're not going
yeah.
to do Birchas mitzvah. We'll take a break from this topic and switch to the second Tishbot. So
Right.
if you're interested, then I'm definitely willing and able.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
interested. I just don't know. I know it's shuls, Sunday mornings. It's a longer davening. I'm not sure what time they start here. So,
They-
well,
They don't start at 10. That'd be ridiculous. But yeah.
no. But I'm saying if they start at 8, like I'm not sure I can get home by 10. Like,
Right. So the way it works